What's up, peeps? Archie here. I think circumstances being what they are in the world, I think it would be pertinent to come back to this for just a little special lesson. I'm calling it a special lesson because it's not necessarily solely about writing advice. It's more an open discussion about a specific topic. Are we in trouble? Is this detention? This isn't detention. No, this is not detention. It's more so just like an extracurricular. You know, we love learning in this household, and so we're going to learn. Welcome to this special lesson on generative AI. The reason I wanted to talk about this in particular is because AI has been, on the up and up. It's been growing, increasing, a lot of money being invested into its infrastructure rather than, I don't know, feeding people, housing people, anything involving actual real life people. But who am I to judge? Who am I to say what's right or wrong to be throwing your money at? Since it is becoming more prevalent, I think it would be worth it to give a little bit of insight into the field of generative AI, or just AI in general, and kind of scope things out. What is generative AI? Well, it is, according to the definition given by Wikipedia, a subfield of artificial intelligence that uses generative models to generate text, images, video, audio, software code, or other forms of data. Works that it produces depends on the quote-unquote data that you train it with. If you put in a bunch of images, it's going to spit images back out at you. If you put in a bunch of text, if you try to have it be a chat bot, you're going to get that text back. There are a lot of different applications that generative AI has been used for. You got chatbots, you got text to image or text to videos where you put in a prompt and it gives something relating to that prompt as best as it can based off of the model. Those are the most prevalent, but there are other applications. And now let's look into a little bit of the origin of AI. So as far as generative AI goes, we first see these sorts of deep learning algorithms and models introduced in the late 2000s. And it's mainly used for classifying images and recognizing / processing speech and language. So you basically input a bunch of words from a language and then it says, oh, that's Italian. Or it can even translate said language based off of what application the model has. And as we see up at this image above me in this example, we have an image of a cat that is fed to a deep learning module. And with 92% accuracy, it correctly guesses that this is an image of a cat. I don't know where the 0.03% says that that's a bird. That would be a very interesting bird, but a fairly accurate assumption that it is indeed a cat. From then on, we continue to get improvements, advancements in this technology. 2014, we see the first deep neural networks that are capable of complex generative models. This is still kind of in its baby forms. 2014 is roughly around the time that we see some sort of generative model that we are actually pretty familiar with on this channel. If any of you have seen my InspiroBot streams, InspiroBot is generative AI in a way. It's just the very, very early stages of it. It doesn't even read as what we know of generative AI today because it feels a lot more jumbled and random. It's more along the lines of a Mad Libs than it is actually a proper chatbot or things like that. Instead of an actual sentence or line of thought or anything like that, InspiroBot tends to be more along the lines of you got this generic blank slate motivational text, and then it's got blanks that it fills in with whatever sort of database it has going for it. And so we just get random image applied with random text, and that's just how it goes. So where do we go from here? We have the late 2000s, we got 2014, 2010s, we got all this early stages baby mode stuff, and then comes 2020. 2020, we see a significant rise in generative AI, specifically when it comes to voice cloning. A lot of you probably remember the memes of like gamer Joe Biden and gamer Donald Trump, and how they like say a bunch of kooky, quirky things as if they were like in a COD match or something like that.
All right, boys, where we dropping?
Don't pick something sweaty.
Come on, Joe, let's drop farm.
No, please no. I want to loot and get good guns first.
Joe's right. Let's drop somewhere where no one will find us.
It pretty much sort of becomes a gimmick from there. A lot of people meme on it, even though the application or the implications of being able to fake somebody's voice are pretty like serious. If you get somebody who doesn't know about the technology and you trick them into thinking they're talking to a real person, you can get away with a lot of things. And it only kind of gets worse from then on. We get significant advancements in AI image and text-based content. Someone puts in a text-based prompt of a tabby cat, and because of the learning algorithm that this AI has, it is able to successfully recreate an image of an actual, well, not an actual cat. It's still a fake generated image, but it is a cat. It is the shape, it is the form of a feline. There was a case where someone used AI like that in a court trial to have the murder victim testify. See, that is just like, it is so, it sounds like an episode of Black Mirror. And honestly, generative AI has been compared to Black Mirror in many, many cases. It is so like dystopian, unethical. Yeah, unethical is another word for it. We can see that this technology has technically been around for at least like 18 or so years. So it's pretty like, I don't know. I mean, it's old enough to vote now. It's old enough to vote, which just the thought of generative AI voting, no, please no. Continuing on from here, what are the pros of generative AI? Well, we got a couple that I can like name off the top of my head. The ones I can think of are you have someone to chat with about your ideas. You can go to ChatGPT, say, hey, I got this idea for a thing, and it could be like, oh yeah, that's a really cool idea. And you can actualize things that you imagine. Like you can have an AI prompt write you a book. You can have it make an image that you have in your head. You can have it make a video that you don't want to like edit. And you can even have it like do music or podcasts. There are so many like creative outlets that can be recreated using generative AI. Now, what are the cons? What are the cons of generative AI? Well, I am glad you asked. So as we can see, there are a number of significant cons to generative AI. First off, generative AI, especially in a text environment, places people in an echo chamber of positive reinforcement. ChatGPT loves to agree with people, and it makes people feel comforted and secure. And it's like, oh, I do have good ideas. These are things that I should be doing. But like, that's not necessarily how human ideas work. There are a lot of bad ideas that people have. Like, I don't know, taking over Greenland, for instance. But that's neither here or there. That is completely just like off the top of my dome. It is also commonly used for fake news and scams. People will generate AI text or headlines and pass it off as if it were a real thing, and that could have very dire consequences because people respond to said quote-unquote information, not always like with the knowledge that they are doing so blindly. It also displaces the human workforce, especially in creative fields. People, especially companies, love to replace their creative fields. They think it's a waste of money, and they would rather just cut corners in that sort of regard. Oh boy, I picked a good time to become a creative writer. Ha 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 ha. Also, based off of that, it's plagiarism. Generative AI is just straight up plagiarism because you are taking the creative works of somebody else as a template for the AI to base their models off of, and so it's not always done with consent. It's not always done with consent of the writers. In fact, it's virtually never done with the consent of the writers or the people who made those images. And so you're technically breaking the law, but there are no real laws against generative AI yet. So at the same time, it's kind of not. It's more of like a no-no, slap on the wrist sort of thing. People hate you for it, than it is actually like physically illegal. Generative AI also creates a lot of environmental damage. It has high energy costs. It produces a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. And we're just sort of getting into the scope of all of that. Like in the early stages, in like early 2025, there wasn't a lot of information on how much these generative AI, especially the data centers involved with them, there wasn't a lot of like information on how much energy is being used or what sort of impact it has on the communities that these data centers are a part of. But we are getting that information more steadily in the more recent months. Also, this is a pretty big one. There is actual scientifically proven degradation of cognitive function when it comes to the overuse of generative AI. It's kind of like smoking a cigarette. Just once, you're probably not going to have a lot of serious, like long-term effects, but as you continue to use it more and more and more, your mental faculties actually decline. And that's not even a joke. This stuff makes you dumber. Also, it doesn't even look good. I mean, you could read the rest of this text. I'm not going to go into it. But like basically a lot of generative AI, like you can argue because it's still in the early stages. Of course, it doesn't look as good as the real thing because it's still learning, it's still processing. But like even in the short time that we have seen like videos of, say, Will Smith eating spaghetti, like we technically have seen vast improvements to sorts of images and videos like that, but you can still definitely tell there are a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that human artists would not do, especially when it comes to overlapping fabric, backgrounds. And there's also like a very distinct style, not only to how AI speaks, texts back to you basically, but also with the way that the images look, especially cartoons. Oh my God, it loves big-eyed, generic like Disney build sorts of images. It's very strange, but you can definitely place it. It's a little harder with anime, and actually, that is important because we have seen a number of VTubers, especially within the corporate sphere, we have seen VTubers who accidentally use AI image created backgrounds. And that's because it is a little bit harder to tell if like the prompts are more basic. But especially with anime, there does seem to be a distinct style of shading when it comes to like anime girls or like just like anime characters in general. Like I don't know how to describe it, but the lighting for AI generated anime it's very, very particular. Where do we go from here? Well, let's start with one of the cons I mentioned, cognitive decline. I feel like that's one of the more important ones. There was a study done by MIT. Some MIT students were testing the effects of ChatGPT usage or other text-based AI. They have found that it does have a tendency to agree with the user, creating confirmation bias that may or may not be skewed depending on the information on hand. Like basically, if you feed certain like phrases or ideas to a chatbot and ask about said information to said chatbot, it'll be like, oh yeah, totally. And if people don't do the further research, actually, speaking of, when searching online for information, AI overviews, if there's the presence of an AI overview, it tends to cut further research via click-through rates by over 34%. Basically, if an AI overview tells you, oh, hey, yeah, here's the information that you need, most people just take that at face value. They do not search any further than that. I know that I am a little guilty of this as well. I feel like a lot of people are, but this one in particular is very bothersome because even if I do see an AI overview, I will try my diddly darn hardest to look at other articles to confirm the information that the AI overview gave, or at least follow the links that it provides to make sure I am getting proper information. But because that is a lengthier process, and we are living in an era where a lot of people prefer immediate gratification, I feel like this kind of exacerbates that issue. There's a very famous example of somebody looking into a way to make red dye. They applied that recipe to a book they were writing. This is an actual published work. And it turns out that the recipe they used was an AI-given recipe on how to make red dye in the video game Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. They used a video game recipe, like, it straight up says Lizalfo's Tale. It straight up says Lizalfo's Tale on the recipe, and they didn't bother to check further. They just put that in their book. And, like, they could definitely be sued for that, I would imagine. Lizalfos is a Nintendo property. It's their IP, it's their intellectual property. Now on to the actual meat and potatoes of that MIT study. So an MIT study published in June of 2025, so just last summer, showed that an over-reliance on ChatGPT when it came to writing essays led to lower brain activity, often led to copy-paste methods, and resulted in lower memory recall and overall less cognitive engagement. Basically, if you don't have to actually like think about the material that you are writing, then you are less likely to remember anything about it. Which makes sense, because when you are actually doing research, when you are actively going in and processing this information with your own head, then you're more likely to remember it. But if you just like let a chatbot do all that thinking for you, if you just let an algorithm take the place of your brain, then it's doing all the thinking, it's doing all the learning, you're just looking at the text at that point. Basically the equivalent of copying down the answers from that nerd that you sit behind in math class. You're not actually learning math. Even if you're getting a passing grade, you're not learning math. You are just learning what answers are correct. Thinking is a very critical part of learning. And learning is very important to, I don't know, the progress of humanity. So, yeah, very unfortunate circumstances that people are relying on this so heavily. But that's what echo chambers do. They make you think that what you are doing is a good thing, when it could actually be very, very insidious and harmful. Next, weaker workforce. Now this one is technically debatable, depending on which way you look at it. And I'm gonna go into a little more depth with each like viewpoint, just to make sure that I do give a fair, non-biased assessment. Massive layoffs have occurred as a result of AI, especially in creative departments for fields like advertising, media, etc., where AI is expected to replace the lost labor. If you have a company that, let's say, is advertising a soda or something, usually when you're advertising a soda, you have to pay actors, you have to pay script writers, you have to pay filmmakers, you have to pay camera crews, set pieces. There's a lot that goes into advertising, a lot more than you would expect. Even if it's just like a CGI video, you still have to pay all the artists, all the there's still like CGI film directors and things like that. There's a lot that goes into it. And not only that, when it comes to script writing, people will fire the writers and rely on ChatGPT or other chatbots instead. As you might expect, a little bit of bias here. As a writer myself, this is god awful. And what's worse, what seems to be like the insult to injury, is the fact that a lot of people who implement this into their companies, the AI that they implement is not even up to par. And so they will hire on writers to train the AI as if to say, hey, we're gonna fire you and replace you with a robot, but can you like train that robot to replace your job? Oh, thank you so much. We'll make sure that you still get that holiday bonus you were looking for, he. Another use of generative AI that we've seen is an applicant tracking system, or ATS. They're used by businesses to streamline the job application process. However, this also leads to the shirking of qualified candidates if their resume doesn't match the algorithm. What these tracking systems do is they look for very specific skill sets within these resumes, and they will narrow down the candidate listings to ensure that there is a short list of candidates who match exactly what the company is looking for. And like I said, this does lead to other qualified candidates just being tossed to the wayside. However, there is a bit of a counter argument here, and I can see an actual usage for this. When you're looking at job applications, there are easily, especially online, if you post to things like LinkedIn or Indeed, there are applications that get hundreds of applicants in a single day. And if you are a single human being looking through all of these, you do not have the time to go through hundreds of applicants a day. So having an algorithm to sort of make a short list for you is actually beneficial and does cut down on a lot of wasted time, essentially. Also, I did say that the qualified candidates are shirked, but if you think about it, you do have a job opening that is only for one person. So at the end of the day, only one candidate is going to get that job anyway. So it's probably likely that the candidates that were shirked were probably going to get shirked regardless. I can see that being an argument for it as well. And just because the algorithm kind of narrows things down does not mean that the people reviewing these applications don't look at them. I have seen some business articles that do state that the people in charge of the hiring department, they do still look at the applications. They still do review some of them, mainly the ones that are probably shortlisted by the ATS. Yeah, there's still like a balance between human and AI usage. On the flip side of things, AI is not just used by the hiring process, it's also used by the hirees. A number of applicants also use AI-generated resumes in an attempt to fake their way into a job they're not necessarily qualified for. So there's a lot of like back and forth. It's basically AI versus AI at this point, and like it's a lose-lose situation for human beings. Because companies don't want to hire people who are not qualified for their jobs, and applicants don't want to get lost in a sea of resumes that are faked by AIs, essentially. And if you end up having overlap between your human-made resume and an AI resume, and the AI that the company is using doesn't recognize that you are a human being and thinks instead you're an AI, then like, it's going to boot you out. It's a robot thinking you're a robot and canceling you out. And like, there's just no human interaction whatsoever. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating for people looking for a job, for people laid off because they were replaced by a robot, essentially. There is a very, especially in the US, I guess I don't know where it is everywhere else in the world, but especially in the US, there is a very heavy slowing down of the job force. Because even though we have like a pretty decent unemployment rate, there's still a lot of job openings, and there are a lot of people looking for work who are not hearing back from their applications, and it's just, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. It's like, hey, I want a job, and everyone throws their hands up in the air. It's like, okay, yeah, go find a job. It's like, I want a job with you. It's like, and that's about as far as it goes. Also, aesthetically displeasing. Now, I do apologize for the use of actual AI images in this slide, but we do need a better kind of glimpse into what it looks like so we can further recognize it, so that we can actually like parse it for ourselves And also, I thought this was very pertinent that we get a little bit of insight from a very, very, very famous artist. Generative AI, while growing more sophisticated, typically does not handle intricate details well, as we were discussing earlier. It often messes up things like layers of clothing, hair, fingers, overlapping parts of the background. Like, there are a lot of things that can go wrong and do go wrong when it comes to generating an AI image. Images and videos are often seen as lifeless and have no real continuity or cohesion unless prompted to. We can definitely see this in the advertisements I was talking about earlier. The Coca-Cola ones where there's just like a truck driving and then it shows some animals and then there's like a family and it's at a house and then the truck shows up again and then it's driving over a bridge and then it goes back to animals and like there's nothing there. There's no substance, there's no story. And that's the thing that like really drags people into your world building is the story behind it. And it's so frustrating that people don't realize that and end up firing the creative departments. There's a lot to go over, and I don't know if I necessarily have the patience or the energy to constantly yell about it, so I'm just gonna cap it there. There is a very famous AI filter that has been going around. We see people plugging in their own images and asking them to make it into a Studio Ghibli style. That's plagiarism, first off. And also, let's see what Miyazaki has to say about this. He was shown an AI demo in 2016. In 2016, 10 years ago, he was shown an AI demo. He states here, "Whoever creates this stuff has no idea what pain is. I never wish to incorporate this technology into my work at all. I strongly feel that this is an insult to life itself." We see this guy who strongly opposes AI. He does not want to associate anything in the creative field with AI, and yet people, as if slapping him in the face, spitting at his face, they have basically trained AI to make Ghibli-style images based off of his work. And they just pass it off as like, ooh, it's a funny filter. But like, that is very harmful. That is very damaging to this guy's reputation. To basically reduce him to some sort of like goofy, quirky little photo filter when he has spent his entire life in animation, in art. He says it's an insult to life itself because art is one of the things that makes life life. It's one of the greatest things about humanity, and shirking it for AI instead is just an insult. That's the best way to describe it. But yeah, like I said, AI proponents will often use famous works as a base for their own algorithms without permission, which is considered plagiarism. It honestly sucks. And a lot of these like cartoon images that we see here, a lot of them, maybe not this one in particular, but a lot of them use stuff like Disney or other just like famous works as their basis, as their grounds. It's a facsimile of what it is intended to be. And yet people will swear up and down that it looks so good, that it's so good at generating images, even when there are very clear mistakes, even when people just don't like what they see at all. Like this monster here. It's a monster wearing glasses. It's got some like things on it. I don't know if they're supposed to be mushrooms. They kind of look like candy corn. It's got a hat that I think says ugly, which is kind of funny. It's got these two weird blue buns on the side of its head, which I don't know what's going on with there. It's very hard to tell what this is supposed to be, why it is. Like, what are these things on it? Like, it has a pouch slash front chest backpack thing. I don't know what that is, but yet somebody generated this and thought, wow, this looks so good. And like, this is This is an image being used to promote a website that generates images. And that is baffling to me. Absolutely baffling. Also, the environmental impacts. So the more immediate impact to generative AI comes from its extensive resource usage, namely in terms of electricity and water demand to power and cool its systems. Amazon itself has over 100 data centers worldwide, each with roughly 50,000 servers inside. The increase in data center infrastructure has led to increasing utility costs for neighboring towns and cities. You can definitely just search this up and confirm it for yourself. A lot of people have seen their electricity bills in particular shoot up because data centers went around in their area. Also, the amount of water used to cool is draining their water supplies, and it's not fun. As an example, there is an estimated 2 liters of water per kilowatt hour of energy to be used to basically generate this AI. Now, 2 liters of water per kilowatt hour of energy. That is basically 2,000 liters of water per megawatt hour. And here we can see that 2021 research estimates that 1,287 megawatt hours are used in the AI training process alone. 1,287 megawatt hours. If we multiply that with the 2,000 liters of water per kilowatt hour, that roughly translates to 680,000 gallons of water per year. Or, frick, I gotta do the math again. I did the math in preparation for the stream, but I completely forgot. 2,000 times 1,287, that's 2,574,000 liters of water that go into AI training. And to put that into perspective, the average person drinks about 58 gallons of water in a year. 58 gallons. And the AI training uses 680,000 gallons of water. That is equivalent to 11,724 people going without water for an entire year. 11,000 people. 11,000 people without water for a year. That is literally killing people. Now, there is a very, very slight counter argument that some people love to make. I've seen this online before. The counter argument is that beef, the production of beef and other meat in the meat industry, the production of beef uses more water than an AI data center. And I do not know the specific math for that, but my counter argument to that, my rebuttal, would be the fact that beef is like an actual source of nutrition and life. It's food. This is generating food. The water is being used to generate food, which also sustains human life. The water for AI is being used to generate AI, which is images, which is text, which is not food. They are not on the same field, I'm sorry to say. All right, so I think, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So I have a couple videos now to share. We're gonna go into a couple videos that pertain to the use of generated AI. We're going into this one first. This was a video made back in 2019. This is a video of a guy who wrote a script, like wrote a short story off of AI and made a video about it with randomly generated characters from a program. And it's just supposed to be a goofy, like I said before with InspireBot, it reads much more like a Mad Lib, and it's much more of a novelty thing than it is an actual, like, take this seriously sort of thing.
Harrison looked around at the class and rolled his eyes. He didn't understand why there was no one there. He met Dexter Longbottom, who was deep in conversation with a wave of cold sweat. Yaxley explained that today was a special day. Today was Spaceship Day. Of all the special days, this is the one that really means something. Ask yourself, What would life be like with the stars of heaven? No magic in front of our eyes, no idea of the beyond. On Spaceship Day, we send someone special to the dark mystery beyond, and they make two of their friends come along for the ride. By going on the adventure, the friends learn the hard way to deal with all sorts of terrible misfortunes. It is a good thing to go. If I am asked to go to the dark mystery beyond, I will have you come along for the ride. Take care what you say, Harrison and Dexter, Yaxley cautioned. People might hear you and take it seriously. Harrison looked back at Yaxley sharply. He will be seriously coming along for the ride. Then it will be people who feel not asked. You will need a girl of great surprises to join you. I will come along for the ride. I am nervous about Charlie, friend. The other students say that she can giggle, and that her giggles cause others to lose control, like some sort of exploding kidney. Perhaps she does have giggles that cause others to lose control like some sort of exploding kidney, but she is the best chance we have if we visit the dark mystery beyond. Harrison thought desperately for about 20 minutes, and then finally finished thinking desperately. Harrison and Yaxley looked at each other for a fraction of a second before they were ready to fight. Yaxley slapped Harrison's face and then laughed jeeringly at him. Refraining from slapping me will be a very ugly mistake. With great reluctance, Harrison quickly slapped the face of Yaxley, and he fell to the floor, defeated. So it was decided that Harrison would go to the dark mystery beyond. Harrison looked at Charlie nervously. Do you remember the time we went to eat together just 1 year before? Charlie nodded. How could I forget? Harrison smiled weakly. Did you want to tell me something extremely personal? About 10 hasty seconds later, they were off to the dark mystery beyond. Charlie sat next to Harrison and looked out across the dark mystery beyond and thought of her sister back home. She seemed to be rather unhappy to Harrison, so he asked her, You seem to be rather unhappy? Charlie turned to Harrison and growled. The dark mystery beyond is much different than the time we went to eat together just 1 year before. Harrison shrugged. The spaceship did its best to do a good job. The truth is, I did want to tell you something extremely personal. I'm full of ordinary-sounding words, but when I say them, and you are there to hear them, all is well with everything. Spaceship Day had been a very long and special adventure, but they had learned the hard way to deal with all sorts of terrible misfortunes. It was a good thing to go.
And there we go. Look at that. Isn't this so, like, quirky and charming and fun? That was 2019. And now we're gonna jump ahead about 6 years and see what progress has been made with generative AI. This next thing is a trailer for a supposed movie, and you can definitely tell what specific monster-themed movie they are pulling from. But let's just play the video. Yeah. That's a thing. This is a thing. Monster Camp. It kind of got some traction online because people were dogging on it so hard. Understandably, I feel like we could spend a good like half hour at least just dissecting this 1 minute video and going over all the things that are wrong with it. But overall, we see this trend of people. Like, the people who support this, I guess I should say, the people who support this sort of video, they think it is so groundbreaking. I saw some conversations concerning this video. They're like, oh, wow, this looks so well done. And someone was like, oh, yeah, they plan on making a whole, like, franchise universe over this. And, like, you go to the YouTube channel where I got this video from. They've got, like, 3,000 subscribers. They mostly do short form content, none of which applies to whatever this is. This came out in 2024, and there's not been a goddamn word of it since. So, like, I don't know what you're talking about, that this is going to be like an entire franchise, that this is going to be like an actual thing. that people watch, but the thing that bothers me is the fact that like there is so little cohesion. Like this is called Monster Camp, but then suddenly they're in some sort of Candyland situation, and like where's the continuity here? And then they're playing video games, and how does that factor in? And yet people say that this is like one of the coolest things they've seen. I do not understand. That leads me into this question. Why is there so much interest? We see so many issues going on with this generative AI in terms of the style, which was very, very plagiarized off of Monsters, Inc. There's like no question about it. Blue and purple monster, fuzzy, going around, so like that was definitely supposed to be Sully. So why is there so much interest? Why are people like so buying into this so easily? And the simple answer is money. It's all money. Like, what were you expecting? It's money. Oh wow, capitalism was behind it all along. Who knew? So because AI has been being used more prevalently, because there is such a rising demand for it, many tech companies and shareholders and what have you are investing into building this AI, developing it, building the infrastructure to sustain it, and they are expecting big long-term returns, which have been questionable. There have not been like any returns. I know there was one article I was reading that said something along the lines of like 95% of the companies that invested into this certain AI project have not yet seen a return. And yet there is another article that was written by somebody who said like, nah, AI is already doing like $4.5 trillion worth of work and something like that. It's very spotty and it's very all over the place. We do not know where these returns are going to be coming from, what they're going to be doing. But in the meantime, what we have been seeing from people who use AI is that they predominantly have been used in several scam events. I know we're actually coming up on the 1-year anniversary of, for those of you who remember, the Glasgow Wonka event. There was a Wonka-inspired, like, I don't even know how to explain it, like a little like fair or something that was supposed to be going on in Glasgow, Scotland. And when people arrived, they found a mostly empty warehouse, very sparsely decorated. There were like 3 or 4 paid actors there. One, you see this very famous, or infamous rather, image of this lady who's like painted as an Oompa Loompa, and she's got some like candy stuff here, beakers. There's actually not a lot having to do with Willy Wonka, aside from the fact that she is an Oompa Loompa. That's about it. And this was very, like, people paid money to do this. They demanded to have their money that they spent to go to this event. They demanded refunds, understandably. I'm pretty sure the police were called because it was just fraud. It was basically fraud. 2 Halloweens ago, back in 2024, there was a Halloween parade that was promoted in Dublin. There were, like, Facebook events for it, and it was heavily advertised with AI. Turns out that parade was fake. That parade did not happen, yet thousands of people showed up for this parade that didn't even exist. It was a scam. Also in 2024, this like Pokemon event in the Philippines, very, very similar to the Wonka thing that happened. And it's just, we see this pattern of AI being used to advertise stuff that does not live up to expectation. And that's because it's AI. And not only do we see it being used for these scam events, we also see the AI being used for online content / engagement farming. People will just post hundreds of thousands of videos of AI generated content and just rake in money from that. Because Twitter has that thing where like the more engagement you get from your posts, you like actually get paid for your engagement. I mean, it's basically people taking advantage of the mass production quality of AI, like that aspect of it. They take advantage of the mass production of AI to then basically make a passive income. It's also allowed companies to, as we said before, streamline their advertising and replace the money, quote unquote, lost on paying artists with a cheaper alternative, i.e., AI. That was a very interesting way of phrasing it. But I also included these NFTs here because it is very interesting, the overlap between NFTs and like cryptocurrency. It's basically these tech, as they've been called, tech bros. Like, there is significant overlap between the people who promote stuff like NFTs and cryptocurrency and the people who are so invested in generative AI. It's all this online, tech heavy, all these like tools that are being promoted by these people. And there are even like AI generated NFTs as well. That's become a thing. And the fact that there's this overlap is very concerning, very alarming, especially the fact that a lot of it has been scams. So like, it kind of goes to show what this AI is really being trained for, what it's being used for, and it's not anything practical. It's not anything that is actually wanted or like viable for the public. That leads us to this term that has kind of popped up as a result. We hear of AI being referred to as slop. I've seen some people who have apparently been rather confused as to why AI content is called slop, and so I figured I would set the record straight here. There are many definitions of slop, but the one that is closest to the modern slang usage is unappetizing semi-liquid fluid, or in other words, an amorphous substance that takes the place of an actual meal. When we think of like sitting down for lunch or dinner or even breakfast, aside from like, I guess, soup or like a puree or like oatmeal, most of the time you're thinking of food that actually has like a physical body and is like nutritious. You have different meals that are meant to nourish you, that are meant to give you vital nutrients and vitamins and things to sustain you. That's not what slop does. The purpose of food is to nourish, but the purpose of slop is to feed, especially in large quantities. And the difference there between nourishing and feeding is that feeding just sort of like gives your stomach something to mull over, basically. It's not even on the same level of like junk food. It's not like you're having a bunch of potato chips or something. It's just like baseline, bottom of the barrel sorts of like, this will keep you alive for another day. That's what slop is. It's just meant to be the bare minimum, nothing else to it. And referring to AI as slop highlights the way that it's fed to consumers as a quick, cheap, mass-produced filler with little to no substance. The language that surrounds generative AI is very, very important. The fact that people have referred to it as slop and the fact that it is stuck so hard goes to show that people are cognizant of how AI is being presented to us. It's not meant to entertain, it's not meant to engage, it's not meant to elicit any sort of cognitive thought. It is merely meant to just give us what is seen as the bare essentials. And that is agonizingly frustrating. We are basically being treated as nothing more than a mouth to feed so that these companies get paid, so that these people get their return that they've invested so heavily into. And that's like the hardest slap in the face yet, is the fact that they don't even see us as worthy of being fed this quality content. No, no, no. We get slop. That is all you're good for. That's all that you need, is just slop. And that's why people are so angry about this. That's why, like, I am so angry about this, is that we very, very clearly see this mentality shift. People before were like, oh, we have to spend so much, but there's this tool that comes along to basically replace all of that, and they just jump all in on it. I think that's why a lot of people are very, very heavily waiting for this AI bubble to pop, is that so we can revert back to getting the actual quality that we deserve. If we are spending money on something, we want something back. And that something is not AI. AI is not even something. Also, interesting side note here, just a little bit related. A lot of so-called AI creatives out there, they dislike the use of AI labels. Like, they do not want people to know that what they're making is AI. They do not want that stigma attached to them. People have a right to know whether or not the thing that they are viewing, the thing that they are reading, was generated by a human or not. It's like they are aware that what they are churning out does not reach the quality that they want it to. Being creative is hard. It is very difficult. And I think that is another reason why people have turned so heavily to AI, is because they view themselves as being uncreative, yet having this tool that allows them to be creative. But it's fake. It's fake creativity. The thing that makes creativity so challenging and rewarding at the same time is that there is a lot of brain power that goes behind it. Like, I myself, I struggle so hard when it comes to writing stories sometimes, and that's because writing stories takes a lot of brain work. You have to think of the characters, you have to think of their motivations, you have to, like, invent a person, their personality, the environment they're growing up in, the world that they are occupying. There are so many moving parts, so many intricate details, and you have to lay it out in a way that clues the reader into that as well, so that they get immersed in your world. There's a lot of challenges there. But once you can pull it off, once you know the specific language, once you know the specific mechanics that go behind it, it goes so much easier, and it's so satisfying to get it out there. I think I know why being creative is so difficult, and you want to hear why? I think it is because a lot of times school systems will absolutely gut their art programs. I think the reason why we see such a lack of creativity in these people, why we see a rise in generative AI, is because we do not have the proper know-how for these people to be creative. They have not been given the proper schooling because their schooling does not fund that program. It is going into sports. It's going into the physical education. Art is such an ingrained form of expression for humanity. There's a reason why it's referred to as the humanities. It's because it's what makes us human. And to pass that off to a robot instead, it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. So what is being done about this? It looks very, very bleak, but we have seen some pushback. I highly recommend that you look into if there is any sort of local pushback going on in your areas, because it's highly possible, especially if you live in like a rural Midwest area, it's very highly possible that there might be some infrastructure voting on data centers being built in your area. Or at the very least, call your governors, call your mayors, let them know where your stance is so that they can properly represent you. There are tons and tons of stories of people turning out in droves to push back against the building of data centers. And there have been a lot of success stories. They see the amount of people that are wanting to vote no, and they say, okay, we'll back off. There have been some that progress anyway, which really, really sucks. Not only that, but there are also bills introduced, or passed even, concerning non-consensual deepfake image generation. The amount of pushback that we have gotten from this is very much warranted. The fact that there are bills being introduced and passed in Congress for it is very telling of where the situation is. We really, really need to get laws in place to make sure that this AI does not breach ethical standards. And also, there have been a lot of calls for quote-unquote creators to rely more on their own skills than that of AI, i.e., pick up a pencil, do it yourself. But what is the biggest lesson to learn from all of this? Well, the most important thing to remember is that generative AI is a tool at the end of the day. And as a tool, it is only as good or useful as the person using it wants it to be. As I said before, a lot of people are using it for scams, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily the only case of generative AI. AI has been used in proper ways to like streamline workflows. We can even see edge cases for it in creative fields, as long as it's kept in-house. Like, you know how there are like transition, what would you call them? Frames between certain parts of animation. Like if I move my head from here and then in another frame, my head's over here. Like that motion of my head going from here to there, like there's a lot of stuff. Like if you were doing hand drawn of like this to that, that's like 30 frames of stuff that you have to draw. But if you train an AI that's able to recognize this, and then you tell it to move, and it can do that, like that is a lot of time saved. And hand-drawn animation is especially tricky and especially time-consuming. Anything to streamline that process can make hand-drawn animation come back. And that's what a lot of people want. A lot of people love hand-drawn animation, but it's fallen out of favor because CGI and 3D animation is just so much easier. But if people can like use AI to make that a reality again, as long as it's being used in an ethical manner, like that would be cool. But the main issue that we're seeing is that a large number of people who are leading the charge or heavily utilizing this tool are using it to cut corners, feed misinformation, and sell scams. That's how they're getting their return on their investment, is they're just scamming people out of the money instead of actually giving them a product that's worth it. So the best thing to do for yourself is to learn how to recognize AI and keep up with its ever-evolving progress. And for those of you who's using it for creative purposes, please try to train that creativity in yourself. Your brain is a stronger algorithm than you think. You should train it instead. If you think that you're not a creative person, all it takes is just training. It's like a muscle. Your brain is a muscle, and you need to work it out. And the more you work it out, the longer you work it out, the more you're able to work it out, and the more creative you're able to be. No one starts out perfect, and nobody's even perfect even like months or years after they begin. But eventually you're going to see improvements, as long as you keep at it. You're not going to see any improvement if you have a robot do that work for you. I hope that has been informative. I hope that you learned a few things today. This is a very serious topic, and it's a very prevalent topic, and I just hope that you all got something out of it.